Moy?
Mo.
Okay, I'm here with Lurppis. I'm going to do one of my reflections interviews with him. And so the place I want to start with you is obviously early in your career. It's better to start and work our way forwards. One of the things I always wondered about was back when you were in this Wings team, which was, for people who don't know, was like the definition of like a friends team that got good. Because it was you and your brother, it was Shiri and Barak who were brothers, and then it was a fifth guy.
Well, it kept sort of revolving over time.
Just a fifth guy. So it was these two sets of brothers and a fifth guy. Now you'd think to yourself, there's no way a team like that could ever get good and get to the top of the scene. Because the problem is you're not going to kick your own brother out of a team, and no one is, And so how are you going to get to the top? Like, were you all really legitimately in your own right good players at that time? Was there a degree to which you stuck together and worked you out because you were like these two sets of brothers and you weren't just going to, like, you can't just tell that guy, hey, your brother really sucks, let's just kick him out of the team. Like,
to be honest, we weren't looking for like super skilled players when we made that team. Like our number one priority was finding people who actually wanted to work and like practice and actually try to improve. So I think that was also something that sort of attracted us to the two sets of brothers thing, because we knew that if we had two sets of brothers, then it would be a lot less likely that someone would sort of just quit halfway through, which is obviously what happens a lot in teams that are trying to improve and get better. And I mean, we just realized that it was going to be a long process. Like we weren't just going to get super good just out of the gate. I think I was pretty much the only like even remotely known player in that team at the time. But then obviously Barak and my brother evolved pretty quickly. And we also caught a lucky break because no one probably remembers this anymore, but like the first month that our team was founded in July '04, we played this, I think it was called like Game Puck Summer Cup. And we wound up beating a couple like pretty good Swedish teams. And then we had a somewhat okay match against Titans in the final. That was the Danish team. It was really good at the time. So then like that sort of opened some doors for us to start practicing against better teams, even though we were unknown as individuals at the time.
when you had this famous, the real tournament that put you on the map was actually the qualifier for the WEG, obviously. Because for people who don't know, all the other seasons of WEG, which was this tournament that used to take place in Korea that lasted like a month and was on television, and it was a big deal at the time. It was like one of the tournaments that everyone wanted to go to because you get to go and live in Korea for a month. The previous seasons, they just qualified people by inviting them, basically. Like if you were a big team, you got an invite, and then you went if you wanted to, if you didn't. But for the third season, they made it different. They had an open qualifier for Europe, and all the top teams attended it. Well, everyone who wanted to go, you know. And so, in theory, your team should have been like, from what I remember, the teams that were there, your team and like maybe like Existence or something should have been the worst teams there. Your team and this Spanish team, all the teams like NOA and even the Eyeballers team that was like reformed, and these different teams, NIP, these should have been the best teams that should have stomped it. But your team actually won this qualifier. Is that a case where if you don't win that qualifier or you don't get a spot even, do you think your history goes differently?
I think it changes a little bit. You know, you never really know how much, but I think winning that qualifier definitely was sort of just snowballed everything. It just gave us a lot of confidence going to other tournaments, and we sort of just realized that we can actually beat these teams. I mean, I think our first breakthrough was CPL Spain. That was like April or May, I think, that year. We beat 3D there, and that was like the first big legitimate win that we had at LAN. And then we attended a couple of international tournaments, but I mean, we didn't really do anything major. It sucked in Brazil, and then we won DreamHack Summer against like pretty bad teams. And then we had to skip out on a couple tourneys like late in the summer, early fall. But then like right before the WEC qualifiers, even though we weren't practicing much at the time, like we were mostly just playing a lot of clan base and like just, you know, playing CS together and like mixes and whatever, just to have fun and try to get better individually. All of a sudden we played a couple of scrims. I remember it was against SK actually at the time, the team with Vilden and Spawn, that won both CPLs that year. And we played them in a couple of scrims, and we all actually started just completely demolishing them. And we were actually a pretty bad practice team at the time. Like we were in like Astralis, who were the other Finnish team, who were just known for stomping everybody online. Like we usually struggled pretty much in practice. Like we never, like we could have close games against top teams, but you know, we weren't like running them over by any means. And then like a couple of weeks before the WEC qualifier, we just completely started stomping on like some really good teams. And then we went there and we actually felt like we had a better chance against like some of those really well-known teams, like say like NON and IP, like you said. And then when we got drawn our group, where we had a lot of those like sort of less known teams, like we had that one Swedish team that whose name I can't remember, and then Existence and like Zonix Asylum. Like those were the teams that we hated playing. So we caught a bit of a lucky break to get out of the group, and then once we were out of the group, we actually felt pretty good going into the matches. But I mean, obviously, none of us would have ever predicted that we would beat NIP, Eyeballers, and NOA on the same day.
When you have a team like that, okay, and you're the in-game leader, I realized that was actually the time when you weren't as full-on an in-game leader as you were in the later days. Like that was you sort of were the one who just had to do it.
Yeah.
But in theory, you would think that's like a dream for an in-game leader. Okay, he's got these two sets of people who naturally have a link together, a bond, who can play together, etc., and like each other in theory, these brothers. And on top of that, since your team isn't filled with star players, in fact, at the time it had no stars, no one that was recognized as a star in the world, you'd think that would be like the sort of team would be most open to listening to a strategy or actually practicing and doing a strategy. Did you get to have a lot of impact from the in-game leader role? Like, were you able to kind of offset the fact that you didn't have superstar players by just being better at the tactical side?
Well, I'm not sure if we were better. I think we played fairly simple CS. I think a lot of it had to do with like our problems in practice. Like we couldn't really ever, like, I don't think it was until Hooray for a brief period, and then once we changed names, like not anymore, and then like later on maybe in EG and WinFact that we actually got good practice. Like in those days in Sirius and Wings, we never really got good practice going into tournaments. So like we weren't great strategically in terms of like we didn't have like these super complex strats with a lot of smokes and a lot of flashes, but we were really, really good at playing our game. So like I mean, the story comes to mind. It's like Potty telling us at WEG in Korea that they called our outer split on train the killer round because they knew it was coming, but they still couldn't stop it. So for us, it was more like we played simple CS. Like we knew what we were good at, and we didn't try to overextend. And then we were just really, really good at executing those couple things, and we just relied on them. I mean, obviously, I would have liked to be more strategic. Like me and Shiri were the sort of like the brain of the team. Like we were the ones coming up with strats and that kind of stuff. But the problem is that I don't know, we just could never practice everything properly. Like we couldn't get all those strats down, and it just felt like we needed more repetition. And then it just always seemed like when we went back to the more simple stuff, it just worked out better. And then that sort of just became our identity.
If you think about that team, like before it became the later teams, when it was still like the Hooray, the Wings era of like, actually just before the Hooray ones, it's not the one with Rui, etc.
Yep.
What type of a team could you compare it to? Is there like a reference point you could give people?
Well, I mean, from CS:GO teams, obviously, since no one around would know other teams, I think it's sort of like LGB, maybe a little. I mean, I said that LGB reminds me of like the 69N28E team. I think it's something similar. I mean, they play fairly simple CS, and obviously like sponsorship wise, they're not nearly, at least until they announce whatever they're going to do now, they're not nearly at the level of some of their peers. I mean, back in those days, like we couldn't really compete with other teams in terms of like sponsorships. Like we could only go to so many events a year, and then I think 4 of us went to school at the time, so like we'd always have to go to tournaments with stand-ins because someone had school, couldn't get time off, and then my brother was in 17, so he couldn't go to CPLs, and there were just a lot of things like that. But I think maybe LGB, out of like the modern CS:GO teams, could be something similar.
When you think of the most successful period you had in the Finnish teams with this team, 69N, 28E, and Rockat, where your team was legitimately like at least in contention to maybe like win a tournament or come to the final of a tournament, was there a degree to which it sounds like when I've talked to you, like you didn't get to have that much impact tactically? Like people had their own idea of what they were going to do, and you just did it over and over, and then they would just do their style, they would go to their position, they would play the one thing they were going to do. That sounds like for an in-game leader that's not as good. Maybe what do you think?
No, it was just frustrating sometimes because I think it finally hit everybody. I think it was after the 2007 winner DreamHack. I think we went out against NOA on Inferno, and we were talking at the hotel, talking about like the tournament and how we were playing and everything. And I was saying that I actually wanted to change how we play a lot because the way we were playing, first of all, we hadn't changed anything basically since Blasty joined the team to replace Natsu. And it just seemed like the roles were incorrect anymore, and our playing style was sort of just like out of date, and then it just felt like we had to change a lot. And I was saying like we should do all these new things that everybody else is doing. Like we're just so far behind right now. And then everybody's sort of like, yeah, well, like why are we not doing that? And I'm like, well, because no one wants to do them. And then after that, we sort of changed more. So that was, I think, sort of turning point. But up until then, people were sort of fairly stubborn, but at the same time, we did run like quite a few things. We implemented new things here and there in the Hooray period more so than during the other times, because that's when we practiced the most ever. But it was also a bit like in Wings and serious gaming in the sense that when we stuck to simple things, it seemed like they worked out better. And over time, we sort of on our pace and we started playing slower, and that started working better too. And that's when I felt like we were at our best ever.
The real problem with the teams that we were describing here was that they were the best teams that you had, and they were the most skilled, definitely. And just on paper, they could compete with all the best teams in the world. But like you're saying, there were these problems in terms of like, well, playing more than one style for a start off, or adapting and not just doing the same thing over and over. If you had to look back now, knowing what you know now, is there was there ever another route that offered itself? Like, okay, maybe I have to kick this player who's actually really good, but if I did, okay, I'd have a less skilled team, but maybe I could do more with it. Or maybe instead of doing this thing, we should have gone to this tournament instead. Or was there ever like another path you think that could have been taken, or did it have to go this way?
Well, there were a couple of things that we could have done, like maybe some, like I wouldn't have actually kicked Conte, even though like from talking to you, I think he was usually the problem child in that team. Like he was the one causing most of the issues. But like at the same time, I'm not really sure how the team would have worked otherwise if we didn't have him on the team. Because for the times that we did well, he was definitely contributing a lot. He was playing well, and you just never know if it's gonna work the same way after you change a player. I mean, we basically later on kicked Fraud once from EG, and he was gone from the team for a week because he was impossible to play with. Like that's what everybody thought, even Storm, his longest time friend. And we just couldn't find anybody to replace him with. So we just begrudgingly took him back like a week later. And he was sort of the same in the Finnish teams where we obviously thought about some changes, and like we made a couple of roster changes, but he was always the fifth player for the most part. Like we replaced Tanpa with Natu and then replaced Natu with Plasti. But it just seemed hard to change the core. Like once you're successful with a core of players, it sort of gives you this feeling of safety where you just know you feel like you can put any fifth guy in there and they can pretty much do the job and you'll still be good. So it's hard to make that decision to kick someone from the core. I think that's the hardest thing. I'm not sure if I would have done anything differently. I think the biggest thing that I wish I could have done differently is if I were older or everybody else in the team were older, I think things would have worked out better, because obviously we were all just really young at the time. And knowing what I know now, and from even when we went to that one tournament in Tallinn in 2011, like we were laughing at like all the arguments we used to have back in the days, and like it'd be so much easier if we were just older then. So I think if we were just more mature, I think that would have already fixed a lot of it.
Whenever we have our podcasts, it's a famous theme that as soon as the word social is mentioned, everyone in the whole fucking room knows what argument is about to happen for the millionth time, okay?
Yeah.
When Khan says that line about, like the social thing's so important, and that's what he always stresses. When we're discussing here, except for your first Wings team, where everyone was fucking related for fuck's sake, and yeah, it went really well, every other team you were in featured significant problems. Either one person's really disruptive, or it just in general, the team isn't as responsive to like a leader or doing what one person says. They want to have their own input. When you hear Khan talk like that, and you know that, okay, think about the people he had on his teams. In general, they were like quite laid back people. They weren't really like abrasive personalities. And some of them just happened to be some of the best players of all time. Is there a degree to which you kind of think like, well, that's a nice luxury to have, that you can pick really amazing players who also are really laid back and also really social, where it's like, it sounds like you didn't really have that option even in your career. Like, yeah, you could have picked totally social teams and come 13th at the event, and we'd never be talking right now because you'd be nobody, right?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's the case. I mean, obviously, I would have liked to have played with my friends. I mean, we actually, like me and my brother and Tanpa all wanted to bring in Kupi, or not I guess not Tanpa, since he's probably the player who would have joined. But me and my brother, we definitely wanted to bring Koopy in on Hooray, like later on. Basically, when Plasti joined, I felt like Koopy would have been a perfect fit for our team. But like he was another player who just wouldn't fit with Conte because they had some, I don't know, some arguments about something. But like he would have been, I think he would have been a nice. It would have been like a nice luxury to have because first of all, I think he's a very good player, or was a very good player, and obviously I get along with him very well. I mean, I really don't think you have to be best friends to do really well as a team in Counter-Strike. But you also can't live in a gaming house like Titan does in that scenario. It's definitely more fun with your friends though. I mean, the whole Wings team, Koopy, Barak, and Shiri, and Tanpa, we're all still very good friends. Like we still see each other on like at least like 5-6 times a year and hang out. So that team is just, I mean, it just happened to be a group of people who still, after like it's been a decade since that team started, and we still get along really well. So I think that was just sort of lucky. But I mean, in Finland, you just don't have a player pool to be that selective, and neither did we in the US in EG.
When you had all these problems in that Finnish team, and we used to talk at the time, like what was going on, like who was going to be kicked this month, and then, oh, we didn't kick him, we kicked someone else, and like, you know, just hope. Basically, it sounded like at the time, you either had two modes. You really hope that the new guy you recruit's going to make things better, or you're just like depressed that like, we just have to go to the tournament and just hope like it goes well. Like, I don't know what I could fix at this point. Well, what's funny is I would have thought to myself, okay, you get this offer to go to EG, to go to America. Well, okay, now you finally get to get away from that one group of Finnish players. Things are going to be different this time, you know. You're going to play with these new guys. Not only that, when you joined EG, they were doing really badly. They were like the third best team in America, sometimes the fourth. And so you'd think, well, their egos are going to be in check, you know. They're going to think like, listen, we need this European guy. He knows the strats. He's going to lead us to the promised land. I'm thinking like, this is going to be good. How did it end up in like a similar sort of scenario?
Well, I mean, I was actually planning on writing about this like sometime in the future when I figure out the right context. But I think a big part of why things went south in EG is that I lived with Fraud. I think if we didn't live together, I don't think we would have had those problems, because me and Fraud, like, I mean, we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, but none of those things are problems that, I mean, like I've talked to him. I've talked to him like a couple of months ago or something. I mean, I don't have any issues with him anymore. Like, I don't think we ever had any like real issues that would prevent us from being friends. So I think the whole problem is, first of all, there was a lot of other stuff like outside of the game that I'm just not going to go into, in his life especially. And I think if we just didn't live together, I don't think those problems would have ever really emerged. And they weren't even there at first. I think Warden was really good at being sort of like the glue in the team. Like, he really kept Danny in check. But he also told me when he was quitting that part of it was because he was just sick of like all the arguments and being the guy who also always had to just like cover for everybody when Danny just started raging about whatever. I mean, I really don't know. I think it's sort of just bad luck. Maybe we should have just kicked Fraud during that time in the spring of 2010. But at the same time, Good for Nothing just happened to be like the perfect next glue guy after that, and we were actually really, really good. I actually think that fall of 2010 EG team was at least like very, very close to my best Finnish team. Like that was the team that I definitely felt the most comfortable playing with. Like, going into any matchup, even if we were going to lose, I still felt really good about our chances, because I felt like we're really well prepared for the most part. Like, everybody knew what they were doing at all times, and we had a lot of good players, and it was just like a good mixture of players in a team that we never really had before. So I don't really know. I mean, I think it just had to do with out of the game factors. I mean, that's all it came down to, really.
When you were with your best of the Finnish teams, the pattern was always the same. It went like this: upset a good team, then in the next round when you play another good team, you just lose in like overtime, or you lose like 14-16. It's like always super close, but you always lose, and you could never make a final, you know, aside from that small run that you had. Is there something about the DNA of that team or the identity where you couldn't sort of like maintain the momentum, or you got whittled down when it was the narrow rounds? What do you think it could be?
I think it's actually it's probably going to be a controversial answer, but I think it actually has something to do with like the Finnish culture. because like I think it's pretty much the same in like other sports. Like um there's, I mean, Finnish hockey is a good example. They lost so many finals from like being up and just being like really favorable positions. There's this one I don't even know what you call that sport in English, like when you ski and you like shoot at the targets every now and then.
Cross country
like,
skiing.
okay, yeah, there's a woman who's like really really good, and I think she won like the World Cup in that sport this year, and at the Olympics like she just completely failed. Like she was so terrible, and then she just started blaming like her equipment manager or something for that. And I really think it's just like something in like the Finnish DNA. Like there's a lot of people, even like my friends, like I just feel like a lot of people just like to blame something and just sort of be like, okay, well, I mean, it is what it is. And I think it's just a mental thing. I mean, I really don't know where it comes from aside from that, but I've just noticed that a lot of Swedish people tend to always come through, and then a lot of Finnish people tend to always lose. So I really think it's something to do with the culture. I can't answer any better than that.
Because along similar lines, but in a slightly different sense, the pattern with EG, the Americans, was also like a losing one, but it went like this. In group stages, you were like fucking unbeatable no matter who you were playing. You'd always beat the better team in the group stage. Then in a best of three, it always went like this. You either win map one and then lose the best of three, or you come really close to winning map one, then lose the best of three. It was always like that. It's like, was there some sort of front-running element to that team? What was it about that team?
I think there probably was some kind of a front-running element. Plus also like depending on the shape we were in, not like in terms of CS, but like how we were getting along, how many arguments there were at that specific moment, like outside of CS. I think that played a big part. I mean, like, just to give people an idea, during World Esports Masters WEM 2010, it's like my last international event with EG. Like, I don't think I said a single word to Fraud during that trip. Like I asked him how his apartment hunt was going on the bus ride. It was like 3 hours from Shanghai airport to Hangzhou, and like later on, Jordan nothing told me that he said something along the lines of like why is Tommy asking me about my apartment hunt or something? I'm just like like this is insane. So I mean, like I think people just started getting more annoyed when we started losing, and I think there was also like, I don't know, maybe there's an element of people feeling more pressure. I honestly don't really know where it came from, because I feel like since maybe I want to say like 2006 or something, I feel like I haven't really ever felt pressure, like in the sense that people think of pressure like it hinders your ability. Like I always felt like during big matches I feel more focused because of like the pressure or whatever is there, but like, I've never felt like that was like something that hindered me personally. Like I've never felt pressure. I don't get nervous over like presentations or like whatever. Like it's just not who I am. So I don't know if that was the case for other people. Like I would imagine that's not the case for Storm or Fraud because of like all the success they've had. I think Nothing definitely had a bit of a problem with that, but I'm not sure if that's enough to explain it. So honestly, I'm not really sure. I really don't have a good answer for that. All I know is at least we finally came through at the end, but then when we beat Fnatic in China, but then MSI beat it, and then Good for Nothing quit, so that team sort of died there. I think that's actually like the biggest what if in my career. I really wish that Good for Nothing at least played out the year, and we could have gone to like, I don't know, a couple more tournaments and see how we went, because I thought that team was pretty good.
In terms of as a leader, if you look back on your career now, I know from talking to you, often your frustrations were like this. It was like okay, I have the right tactical approach, so I think I know what we should do, but people won't listen to me. And so if they don't listen to me, rather than just go like fucking, like you're not just going to go insane and say, oh, you idiots, why are you doing that? It's more like you would do like a passive aggressive thing. You just sort of be like, oh, fuck it. If they're not going to listen, then whatever. Like I'll just call the rounds and then we lose. Well, I told you. That's what I told you to do, you know. What? Isn't there a component of being a leader? Maybe it just never naturally suited you. Like if you think of some of the other leaders, I know leaders who actually weren't even that good tactically, but they were really good at like knowing which guy like they can get on their side, and then which guy they have to talk to in a certain way, and which guy they have to maybe tell like, no, you have to do this. Like Like it seemed like you never wanted to be the like emotional leader like that. Was that just something
No.
you didn't think was part of the role?
Well, it's not. I'm not sure if it was like I'm not even sure. Like earlier on, I think like in like the early Finnish teams, I don't think I even like understood the whole part of being like an emotional leader because like I wasn't even like one of the older guys in my teams. You know, like Conte was older, Kupi was older than me, Shiri was older, Tanpa was older, even Ruit was a little older than I am. So I mean, like back in those teams, I just felt like it wasn't even like an option because I felt like we were all equals on that level. In EG, I actually knew that I should have done that more, but like it just. I don't know. I just don't think it was something that I really wanted to do. Like, in my mind, what I wanted to do was tell everybody what to do in game, and then just have someone else take care of whatever outside of the game. Because like I don't know. I guess because I'm sort of I don't know how to put this. You know, like I don't need to depend on other people to make my choices. Like I don't, you know, if I want to go eat something, I'll go eat something. But then there's people in the team who are like, okay, well, like where are we gonna go eat? And this has actually happened where I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna go eat at Subway. Like you guys do whatever you want. And they're like, why can't we go eat as a team at place X? And I'm just like, well, I don't want to eat there. Like I want to eat at Subway. Like we'll just meet back at the house and then, you know, talk about whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter. And it always sort of annoyed me back then that people relied on me to just sort of run their life outside of CS as well. Like I know a lot of good leaders do that. I know Patrick's a good example. Karn, I mean, I feel like he's a very good leader, like outside of CS and that sort of thing. But it just wasn't something like earlier on. I don't think I really realized that I was supposed to do that. And then later on, I think I just sort of didn't want to do that. But I think part of that was also because in those teams, I felt like we weren't getting along that well at all times. You know, like there was always tension, some kind. So that also makes you not want to like commit emotionally in a way, I guess. I think in WinFact, that was actually a really, really good like emotional leader, if you put it that way, or like outside of the game. Like I think I was really good at that in WinFact. I think that's why we got Aslak to be so good. Because before his first event with us, like he had to take some pills just to take exams at school because that's how nervous he would get. Like he couldn't even like he would just be shaking at finish lands. Like that's why he was so bad before he started playing with us. So I think in WinFact that was actually really good at that sort of thing. But before that, it just wasn't really even a factor for me. I don't think. But it is like one of the very few things that I wish I could have done differently though in hindsight.
One of the weird patterns I noticed in your career, which at the time I don't think you would have noticed yourself until like reflecting on it years later, is that 3 different times in your career you had lineups that in theory might have been better if you'd stuck with a less skilled player. And so the first one is when you had Tonpa and you kick him out, and that's when you got Natu. Now in theory that team was a bit more successful, but okay, maybe that was shorter lived. Yeah. Then Natu's lineup, that was the most successful lineup you had. Then you kicked him and you got Plaste. And then later on, okay, admittedly this guy wasn't kicked, but Good For Nothing was a lot less skilled than Deborn was. But again, you're putting a more skilled player in, but the team actually gets a little bit worse as a result. Is there some sort of dynamic here that sometimes having a slightly worse player, they contribute something else that you've figured out in some sense? Or is it just a coincidence?
Well, the thing is, I did not want to kick Tanpa. Like, I did not want to get rid of him. He was one of my very good friends, like, outside of CS as well. Like, he lived very close to me. We lived in the same town, like, maybe, like, 10 kilometers apart. We hung out a lot outside of CS. Like, I did not want to kick him at all. But he was just sort of, like, you know, like, it just wasn't to be argued against. Like, it was just, Conte basically just said, like, okay, like, I'm not playing with him anymore. And at that time, like, we just didn't want to get into the whole argument of, oh, like, we'll just try to work it out, because we already knew from his personality that it just wasn't going to work, at least in the foreseeable future. So we sort of just accepted that and figured, okay, well, like, you know, maybe Natu will add something to the team. And, you know, he was very good in our team. I think he was good at sort of keeping Conte in reins until Conte just ruined Natu completely. And I also did not want to kick Natu. I was more okay with letting him go because he was less available for practice. Like, Tanpa was a guy who would never turn down practice. He would always be on. He would always boot camp if he wanted. He would go to every tournament. I probably never heard him complain about anything at all. Like, he's one of my favorite teammates ever, as he's Good For Nothing. But Natu was just like hardly ever online for practice, so there were other factors for him too. But I still wanted to keep him on the team, and then obviously with Good for Nothing, like I said before, he's also one of my all-time favorite teammates. So I definitely did not want him to go, but it was he had a situation in his life where it just like made sense to leave a couple months early, and even though I knew that it was going to be bad for us as a team, I mean I consider him a very good friend, so I didn't want to sort of hinder his own life just for like the benefit of us in a Counter-Strike team for a couple months.
Because there's a degree to which this poses an interesting question for the modern day that actually I'm quite curious about.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about the topic of Fiflaren, even though now you've sort of come around on this topic, okay, there was a time actually when Nip was winning everything where you would sort of like do your like Fiflaren countdown of like, when is he going to be kicked? I've even seen you do it for events that they actually won. And so the reason it's funny to me is because when I think of these three examples, it's sort of a similar thing, isn't it, to Fiflaren? Like, okay, it's hard to quantify what he's adding, and there's no doubt that someone like Olof M would be much more skilled if he was in that spot. But would they actually be better necessarily? Like, listen, they might be. So why were you so against that initial idea there? Why did you kind of feel like in that sense, no, they do have to remove like the one weaker player who maybe adds something that's hard to tell outside the team, you know?
Well, it just seemed insane to me. I mean, Fiflaren has had some decent journeys now, but he's still like, I mean, listen, Tanpa, Natu, Good for Nothing, they were never like Fiflaren. Like all those guys, they won big rounds for us. They did a lot of things. I mean, I'm sure Fiflaren does a lot of things outside of the game too, but those guys were far more skilled than Fiflaren is. I don't think it's even close. I just think it's insane, regardless of what he does outside of the game, and how happy he makes Forest and whatever else. It's just insane to me that someone can contribute so little inside of the game and be on a team that all of a sudden is not even winning. I mean, like NIP is struggling so much right now, even though they're still getting those second places. But like if you watch their games, you can just tell there's a lot of things wrong. There's also, like, my opinion was also backed by some insider information that I can't say, but I had a pretty good reason to think that he was not going to last on an IP for long, which in that case would have I think it also affected my opinion, because I think only after I heard some things, only after that did I get more vocal about it, because I felt like my opinion was confirmed and I was correct. And then obviously they just stuck with him through all this time. And I agree, you never know. They could get worse if they remove Fiflaren now, but I don't know. I mean, when do you take that risk? How much worse do you start doing before you say, okay, like we're willing to see how it affects the team? If you get second every time, maybe you're good with that. Maybe you just want to get second every time. Fiflaren gets you that, and he's probably a great guy outside of the game because they all love him. But at some point, if they keep losing, there's just no way they change anybody else but him.
So when you say, like when you made that relative case, like, okay, yeah, even if those guys were the weaker ones in my team, like Tonpa, Natu, they were never as bad as Fiflaren is now in Nip. What is the balance or the threshold, do you think, for what's acceptable? Because obviously, if someone is literally like the support / the role player, there's a degree to which we're accepting already that they're going to be bad to some degree. I mean, I'm wondering what for you is like the threshold point, because I'll give you an example. As weird as this all sound, okay, the Poles won all those major tournaments, but I think fucking Cuban sucked, dude. Like, maybe when he became the in-game leader, he could have more impact and maybe he gave some value then. But when he used to just be a player, I thought he sucked. Now, admittedly, I don't know long-term if they would have won tournaments without him, but I can't help but wonder, wasn't a factor of them being a bit weaker at some of the other tournaments, the fact that you can't have, like, two guys carry the whole team at every tournament in a row. It's not going to work. So there's definitely like a gamble that you're gambling with someone less skilled. How good does someone have to be to fill that role? Like what's the payoff for you? How would you evaluate it?
Well, like if you, I think there's a pretty clear, like if you look at that article I wrote last summer, I think it's called like NIP's losses in numbers or something on Agile TV. I mean, if you look at the if you just look at the statistics, I mean, I know it's just stats. Stats don't say everything, but I think they do say something here. If you look at all the numbers in their games that they won or lost, I think if you pulled out some historical stats for, say, like those Polish teams and whatever, I don't think there would ever be 4 players so closely together in terms of statistics, and then one guy so far apart. Like, I think that's the thing I'm struggling with so much, is that it seems like everybody else can get theirs, and it doesn't even look like Fiflaren has like terrible rolls, because he never really goes first. He's sort of almost like a lurker. He gets a lot of dusty, he gets the op, he gets a lot of easy kills, people just running into his crosshair, and admittedly he's pretty good at that, but it just seems like it's not even his role. Like Tonpa, we just ditched him in like the worst possible roles, and there's just no way he's gonna get kills in some of those roles. I feel like Fiflaren doesn't play the worst roles, and it's just mind-boggling to me how 4 of the guys can contribute so much, and then one guy can just so consistently be so far behind everybody else. And I mean, that IEM Poland final just has to be something like, there's no way that's ever been topped, right?
I can't think it could have been. Not over 2 maps, anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just the parity. Like, there's so much parity between them. That's just the part that I can't understand. I don't know. I mean, that's the best I got. It's hard to explain, I guess.
Okay, but that is an interesting topic, which is the idea of what the role player should do or what he must contribute, okay? Because I'll give you a funny, like, abstract analogy for what I think goes on with people like Fiflaren. So you know how maybe 40, 50 years ago, there was a problem in most Western countries with racism, because at the time, like, black people didn't have the same rights, and maybe it was hard to get jobs and stuff. And so as a result, because their society was held back in some sense, it's true that within their society there was more crime and more of these things. But that's actually a factor, right, actually, of when people like don't have proper education and they don't have opportunities, they're going to turn to crime. Okay, that's just what happens. And so what happened was, as culture, like the white culture, integrated black people and learned from being a child, like, you know, you're not supposed to be racist against black people, like, that's just wrong, you should try and be very fair. You got this swing the other way, where instead, because someone didn't want to be associated with the ignorant grandpa who'd be like, those blacks are all just stealing cars and stuff, the other guy would go the other way to the extreme, and he'd be like, no, black people are all great. In fact, I've got a friend who's black, and in fact, they're better than white people. In fact, you know, I think we should give them more jobs. And, you know, they'd go like way the other way to try and like differentiate themselves. I've noticed the same trend happens with role players, where because so many really ignorant, usually just people who don't know much about the game, fans, will be like, that role play, you know, Al, Senya, Fiflaren, they all suck. They're all, you know, get the Fragger in there. Because that's such an ignorant and stupid opinion. People who think they're, have more of a subtle, more of a refined way of thinking, want to be like, oh, you think they're bad? Well, actually, I think they're really good. You just can't really see what they're doing, you know. They sort of play special role. They do all the dirty work that people don't want to do. And you hear in-game leaders talk about this all the time, like making excuses for those guys. Now, some of them, like Senya is a good example, they really do that. Like, they take really bad roles, but then they excel in the bad roles. So even if the fragging isn't as high, for what they do in the context, it's amazing. They're doing a great job. But you said there, it's not even as though to you, Fiflaren even does have all the shittest roles in the whole game. He just has some okay roles, and he just does average and even those. What should a role player do in terms of like to get away with it, for that to be a valid excuse, and when isn't it a valid excuse? Because the fact that you win alone doesn't mean that you were awesome. It just doesn't. Well,
I think there just has to be some part of the game that you contribute to. Like, you brought up Senya as an example. First of all, like, we've talked about this a lot. He was potentially the best player in the world at playing Alley on Train, and that was Navi's best map, so he definitely played a big part in that. He had a lot of, or at least like a number of big clutches at tournaments. He was like the emotional leader of that team. Like, he was always loud, yelling at the other team, so I'm pretty sure that helped. So it's hard to say, even if Senya has a bad half, like, it's hard for me to say that he's not contributing at all, when you just know there's like certain halves, certain matches that he's turned around himself, and certain sites like Inferno, he used to be pretty good at playing B. That first IEM final they won basically because he was just locking it down. And same goes for the Pulse. Like you said, Like Lord is another player who always got a lot of criticism, but he was a very good clutcher. I mean, I think everybody who's been around since even like 06, 07 knows that. So to me, it's just like, I mean, there's got to be somehow that they contribute, and it has to be consistent. And if you can't name one thing that they do consistently really well for the team, what is it that they exactly do that couldn't be done by anybody else? Because I'd really like to hear one thing that you think Fiflaren is like really, really good at, really, really talented, aside from pleasing Forest.
Well, you know when people are going to use that line that I told you there. Like, we don't understand, man. He does all the dirty work and he does every job everyone doesn't want to. I've always thought that's an area where people went too extreme as well. They make it sound like 4 guys get to do what they want in the team, and then 1 guy's like their janitor. And it's like, right, you pick that up, follow behind me, make this phone call for me at this time. But in a team, usually it's never that extreme. Like, you're an in-game leader. You don't just give 1 guy all the retarded roles, 1 guy all the best. It's more like you have the star, and then everyone who isn't the star is gradually taking some things they don't want, and it's spread a bit, isn't it? So yeah. Is that a factor as well, do you think?
I think so. I mean, I think there are some players who do get the shittier roles more so than others. Like Tonpo's a good example. Like, he played a lot of terrible roles in our teams, and I think because of that, Natu was also forced to do the same because we didn't change too much. But at the same time, like, I feel like some of the roles Get Right plays, people would just say like, oh, those are terrible roles. But he's just so good at them that he actually makes them look like roles that you really, really want to play. I mean, he does so much like just boring stuff where if someone who wasn't very, very good, one of the best players in the world, were doing them, we would just be looking at him like, oh, like, look, this guy's just always like sitting on the other side of the map. He's not doing anything. He's just letting his team die, and then he just dies himself, right? So it's I don't like, and like I said, I don't think Fiflaren has all the worst roles. Like, sure, he has some, but just by the virtue of like how freely NIP plays, surely you have a lot of freedom to do something you're good at. Like, you get to do things. And that's always something that people have done, at least in my teams. Like, I don't know if Fiflaren has like problems with his confidence from like all the stuff that he surely reads online and all the other stuff. But at least in my teams, like, people would always do certain things. Like, they would practice certain things in like scrims and mixes and whatever. And then like all of a sudden they just be like, okay, well, like, I've actually gotten pretty good at this. So like, you mind if I try this? And then like that's how it sort of evolves. Like, you change roles, and the role, you adjust the role to the player. Like, you know, I don't think there's a single role in the world where you just tell them, okay, like, you sit here and you look at this place, and then we tell you what to do then. Like, I think every player needs to make every role their own. Like, obviously, like, you can't just go out trying to get kills and dying, but you know, there's always little adjustments you can make to feel better at that, better about your roles.
This will sound like a weird intro to a topic, but for years, ever since CSGO basically, we've been having this debate back and forwards with Khan, and it's the classic Forest versus Get Right debate. And it wasn't until NIP won fucking 87 maps in a row and God knows how many tournaments that you could even get Khan to just say Get Right is better right now. That's about it took that to break the guy, like 80 plus wins in a row. Before that, he could always fall back on the argument he'll still use now, which goes like this. Yeah, but you have to realize Get Right gets more kills because they put him in the role where he can get the more kills. You know, he's coming from behind, he's playing 1v4. Whereas, you know, Forrest has to go in first. He could just get killed straight away. If that was true, why is there no one else in the whole world who plays that role, who's getting all the kills? Everyone else who gets all the kills is playing the Forest role, right?
Yeah, I mean, the best fraggers probably play like the what would be the exist role, because you know the best fraggers, they don't want to go in first and risk dying. They want to be the second or third guy in, where like their teammates tells them where to look and they just get the easy kills. But it's like you said, there's nobody else who plays the Get Right role who's a crazy fragger like that. And like I think I said that before too. I mean, he's just insane in that role, and like I don't really see why he wouldn't be insane at other roles if he wanted to play them, or if he started playing them in the first place. I think he's just ridiculous, like not ridiculously talented, but he's just ridiculously hardworking, and he has like really good talent to go with it, and that just puts him over the top.
Without revealing anything that we're not allowed to say from confidences or things that we've heard that are hearsay for now, if lurppis had to guess, just from knowing what he knows as an outsider, so everything that you've read just on HLTV.org and you've seen in games, and as an outsider, What would you guess is the reason why there's some sort of friction between Khan and Get Right? Like, they don't even play together anymore. You'd think it'd be that thing where you'd look back on the old days, like, oh, we had a great time. You know, we don't ever have to play again. So, yeah, he was a good player. Like, had a great time. There's something there, isn't there? There's some sort of something holding him back. What do you think?
It's actually sort of weird, in my opinion, because like I said, like, I was really, really not getting along with Danny at the end of EG. Like I said, like, we didn't speak to each other for an entire tournament. We were in China together for a week. We said 0 words to each other during that time outside of CS. And like, even I felt like, okay, like, you know, like, he's a decent guy. Like, a year later when I saw him in New York for an IEM tournament, and it seems like, you know, like, Karn, I don't think still has fully come around. I'm not sure if Get Right has still fully come around. So, I mean, there probably is something. I'm not sure if simply wanting to kick you, like, you know, they were making those changes when Forrest and Get Right wound up going to SK. I'm not sure if that's enough or if something else happened, but I don't know. It's just one of those things that it's like impossible to say from the outside. You know, like, you have to have been in the situation, and some people are also different. But knowing Karn, it's sort of hard to imagine that he's the way he is, because, you know, he's just a very friendly guy. And it's just hard to see him holding grudges. Not that he's necessarily holding a big one anymore, but, you know, like, he definitely was earlier on, like a couple ago.
Whenever we go in on Khan on the podcast, what people have to understand about the context is that we can go in on him that hard because we actually are friends and we do actually get along okay. And so as a result, it's sort of like, with your friends, you're allowed to, like, bust their balls over stuff that you know is going to... And if you know that they've got buttons that are easy to press, you're just going to be jamming that shit all day long, you know? Yeah. So people have to realise we don't really think Khan's shit and that he was rubbish and he just told Forrest to go in the bomb site, kill everyone. I just say that because you see the result. It's hilarious as fuck. Like, just the look on his face when I say it, it's worth it, you know? But here's the thing. There is a degree to which I'm obviously not entirely joking. Like, there's a basis to all the jokes. And so I always wanted to know, from your perspective, it's very easy for Khan to say stuff like, the social aspect is what matters, and you've got to believe that you're going to win, and you've got to, you know, sometimes your teammates are playing badly, but you don't kick the guy. You trust him for a while, and you know that, you know, we're friends, and we'll win. We lose as a team, we're going to win as a team. And eventually, things will come around. You'll win those championships again. When you think of the talent you played with and the talent Khan played with, is there a degree to which you kind of think, like, that doesn't quite work? Like, does he attribute too much of that to his success? Like, do you ever, like, realistically, how would you rate the best players you got to play with against the best players Khan got to play with? Did he get kind of a better deal there?
Yeah, of course he got a better deal. Are you kidding me? He's had 2 of the probably 3 best players in the history of CS on his team. Partly, like, bunch of it overlapping. So obviously he got a better deal. And also I think he helps, like we talked about, like, a lot of his teammates were mellow. Mine were the other way around. So it seemed like his teams had a lot less conflicts personally. I mean, of course, in a way he got lucky, but at the same time, like, I think he was a fitting leader to that team, because, like we said, like, he was sort of like a leader outside of the game, and he was, like, good at making people work together and all that bullshit that I didn't really care about. So I think he also probably fit that team better than I would have. Who knows? Maybe he would have actually gotten Conte to play along. Never know. Wouldn't bet money on it, though.
In basketball, when Michael Jordan was the best player in the whole world, right? A lot of people don't know this, but his friend, Charles Barkley, was also at the time one of the best players, okay? And I remember seeing them on a talk show years later. And because famously, Michael Jordan won all these world championships, but Barkley never won a title, right? He got to the final once and he lost to Jordan, actually. Jordan would always break his balls by being like, listen, I've got all the championship rings, you know, so I was obviously, like, better in every sense. And so Charles Barkley used to always say to him, like, yeah, but I didn't have, like, Scottie Pippen on my team. I didn't have Dennis Rodman. These players that were, like, good players that Jordan played with. And so then Michael Jordan goes like, oh, so you didn't like your teammates? He's like, hey, I love my teammates. They just weren't as good as those players. And the reason I bring this analogy up is, if you're an in-game leader and you look at some of the other in-game leaders in the world and they're winning world championships, or they're always coming top 4, or they get the team where it has it perfectly meshes, is there a degree to which you can ever think to yourself, I'm talking about you literally, specifically, like, tactically I might be better than that guy, or I might, if I had his team, maybe I would win just as much or more than he would, and if he had my team, he'd win less than me. Did you ever have that sense? Did you ever think about it even as a hypothetical?
Well, I'm not sure if I thought about it that way, but I have thought about like how much fun it would have been played to say with like, say like the Navi team with Markelov and Edward, or like the Fnatic team when they had Forest. Like obviously you think about like how much fun it would be to play with those guys, just because like they just make things so much easier for everybody else. So you think about that. I'm not sure if I ever really thought about like how much better I could, like how if I could have done better, like if they would have done worse. Not sure if I went that far, simply because like I was never like the best strategic leader like Ave or Zeus was. So I don't think I ever thought of it that way particularly, but I did always wonder like how much easier it would be to be playing with someone like the legitimate superstars, which I'm not like, I think Ruit was probably the only like legitimate like actual like superstar if we don't count nothing. I'm not sure if he counts.
Obviously, like you said, it'd be fun to play with Na'Vi. If you could have somehow transported your nationality to another one and got to play with a different great team, is that the one that you want to be the leader of? Or is the one that would fit your style more? What do you think?
In terms of fitting style, I think like some of the Fnatic teams would have been better, just because like they played pretty simple CS like my Finnish teams did. So I think like say the teams with like the '09 Fnatic or some of the later Fnatic teams even, I think those would have probably been a better fit, because you never really know how the Navi team would have functioned without Zeus's leadership, because obviously they were a good team strategically. But even then, I feel like if you have really good players around you, you can always make it work. I felt like I was always pretty good at getting more out of my players than it was the sum of their parts. Like that's what I felt like I was good at. Like if you gave me 4 players, I felt like I would make them better than they were previously in their teams.
Okay, I'm passing you a live hand grenade on this one, because this is a question that I'll even admit I'm not even sure if it's 100% possible to answer without sounding biased in one way or the other. And so it goes like this. I will fully acknowledge I think Khan's one of the best leaders ever, like one of the best 5 leaders ever for sure. And in terms of Swedish leaders, he's obviously number 1. He has all the results and he was really good at his style. But there is always going to be this thing that nags at me, which goes like this. When Get Right and Forest went to SK, they had Robban as their leader. And listen, again, Robban would be in the top 10 ever, but he'd be really low on there, okay? And I actually think he was kind of a bad leader. Like he had certain flaws which you could tell would stopped his team from winning really big tournaments. So when I think of the difference between the two, Khan should be up here and Robban should be down here. But then when I look at the results that the SK team had with Forest and Get Right, when they sort of swapped stars, they're almost the same as the Fnatic results. Like there's not really that much difference. Like I'm looking at them and there just isn't really that much difference. And I'm wondering, is it that super best all-time great players really can just make that much, it can win no matter what? Or is there some difference here where, do we overrate Khan in some sense because of that? How do you answer this? It's a hard one, you see.
It is a tough question. Well, first of all, I think that Robin was a somewhat decent fit to lead those players. I think we may have talked about this on podcast before, but say someone like Threat would have been atrocious to lead Forest and Get Right, because like his style would have just never fit. Robin was like freestyling enough that I felt like he was a reasonable fit to them. But I mean, obviously, I think that's something that like, I mean, obviously, if there were like a Counter-Strike Hall of Fame, I mean, Karn would be like a first-time inductee. There's no question about it. But like, if we were making like all-timer lists, then I think that would be something that you would have to consider. Is like the quality of players that you had playing for you, because like you said, I mean, there really wasn't that big of a dip, and I'm not sure if there was a big difference in the other players in that team too. I mean, they pretty much had similar players there. So I agree. I think Karn is one of the very best leaders ever there. I don't think there's any question about it. But I think he did definitely get help from just happening to play alongside Forest, and then basically everybody else just wanting to play with Forest. I mean, I don't think Get Right or Gux were like inclined to play for the Fnatic brand. I think they wanted to play for Forest when they first joined Fnatic. I mean, with Forest, excuse me.
So I've got another grenade for you here. So this is a fun one though, because this is a purely hypothetical one, speculation. We have no way of knowing what would have happened here. A lot of people won't know this. At the end of 2006, You have to realize, for people who don't know, in 2006, that's when the great Fnatic team with Forest and Forest and Khan and DSN was formed. And over that year, they actually really struggled. They would always lose to NIP. They would always come second or third in the majors. And it wasn't until the very last tournament of the whole year that they won CPL. And so they got to the very top at the end. And now you're thinking, yeah, I know the rest of the story. Next year, they become the best team in the world. And then after that, a couple of years later, they get right and they become even better. And, they're just one of the greatest teams ever, one of the greatest cores ever. What people don't know is, at the end of that year, after winning this one big tournament,
I know where this is going.
If CGS hadn't happened, then there was going to be a team made that would have been Forest, Zet, Spawn, Roban, and I think Vale. It was going to be like an SK super team, and they would have left Fnatic, Forest would have, and they would have just been left, and remember Temple left as well, so they would have been left with Khan, DSN, and Archie, and they're going to have to rebuild now. Now, I'm not going to ask you what would happen to that super team, because that's like insane speculation. Who the fuck knows? But what I want to know is, what do you think would happen to the career of Khan, DSN, and Archie? Like, could they have found other star players and would we still think of them as a great team? They could have become a great team again? Would they have molded some young player? What do you honestly think would have happened?
I think 2007 for them probably would have been a lot like 2011 was for Fnatic after Get Right and Forest left. Now, obviously, that super team being built would have left open a lot of other very good players in SK, so they probably would have just like combined to try to find like a good mixture of players. But obviously, like I think the majors go out of the window. I don't think they're definitely not a top 3 team anymore at all times. I don't know. I really wish there were a way to just quantify like how much, like say we had like a PER type statistic for CS and we could just like quantify just how much Forest mattered in those wins, and just at least like, at least have some figures, even if they're wrong, to just like work with that, how much like Forest did, because obviously that would have been an insane team. So just that team existing, like let's say they do okay and then they change a player, I think that team starts winning eventually. Like even if they had those struggles that the NIP team had 2 years earlier when they made that super team with Hyper and Heaton and Potty and those guys, even if that were to happen, I think they still would have figured out a way to win, because Forest and Zed had gone to like a Swedish land called Rendezvous together, and they obviously liked playing together. They just wrecked everybody. Like it was just insane. And I think Wally and Robin would have been okay just sort of like drifting to the side a little. Now, I'm not sure how Spawn would have fit, actually. I think that would have been an interesting question. But, I mean, I just don't see how the carriers of Karn and DSN just don't get affected by that a lot. Like, I just don't see how that's not possible. It's sort of like, I mean, if we go back to basketball, it's like, what do you think happens to Pippen if MJ leaves?
Sure. I mean, he obviously wouldn't win as much, would he?
Yeah, like if he doesn't come back for the next three-peat, what happens? Say he retires after the gambling thing. You think Bulls win 3 more? No, I don't think Bulls win 3 more. No. Yeah, so I mean something along those lines.
So I have another speculation one, because you and I have a problem. I've realized that we need to like confront now. This is like an intervention that we're going to do here. Here's the problem. Because players who are in-game leaders who have a looser style, part of what works about the looser style is you're sort of giving the star player some of the say in what happens in the round. And so unfortunately, when the star player makes the right decision and he wins the round, there's a degree to which you're sort of like, the in-game leader's like, I told him to do that. And you're like, nah, he sort of did that himself though. And so you don't want to be totally unfair and be like, listen, you obviously played a part, and listen, you picked the right time to give him some say and stuff like that. So it's like, I'm giving you partial credit, but it's sort of like having like an adopted kid. Say the adopted kid goes into the World Series and he hits like a home run and you're like, that's my boy. And they're like, yeah, sort of. Whereas if it's actually your kid, then you can be like, that's my boy. And they're like, well, it is. Yeah. So unfortunately, I've noticed we have a bias towards that the super sexy genius in game leader, the guy who just knows everything the opponent's doing, and he's prepared his strategy, and it's so detailed, and he knows that, listen, I could run this strat 10 times in a row and you can't stop it 10 times in a row. Like I could beat you just using strats you even know are going to come. There's something so sexy about that, because it's like he's winning the game just with his mind, you know. The other guy, he's sort of using the players as like tools to win the game. Is there a degree to which that we give that guy too much credit? Are we giving the guy the right amount of credit? How do you see it weighed up? Because obviously you weren't that type of in-game leader, so it's weird that you yourself kind of veer towards that, because you were more of a Khan sort of leader, right?
Yeah, like in comparison to that, yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, I think part of that is like people always want what they don't have themselves, so I think that's why that seems more interesting to me as like a possibility of having someone like that. I really, really, really wish that we could have done like. Actually, I take that back. I was gonna say I really wish there were like super in-depth interviews with Abe and Zeus, that we could like really just like go into their heads and like gob B and just like see what they think about all this stuff. But then like the second I said that, I remember Abe saying that he thinks Arcadian was like a better in-game leader than him. So then that all goes out the window. I really don't know. I mean, we probably do give him a little too much credit in general, but say like someone like Abe, I mean, he just won with so many different players with like different stars, and I don't know. It just seems hard to give him too much credit, but it's also impossible to say without having been there in the team. Like you said, like it's just impossible to say from the outside. I don't know if the kind of in-game leader ever existed, the one you and I wish were there, that we could just root for and all that other good stuff. I'm not sure if that ever existed. I'm not sure if there ever were one. And I think as a result, it's possible that we give him a little too much credit. But at the same time, like if you look at someone's track record over a long enough period of time, I just don't think it lies too much.
Because one thing I noticed, unfortunately, when you root for that sort of player, is that they don't actually tend to win that much. Like what happens is they're really consistent. So think of Abe, think of Arcadian, not Arcadian, Existence. Mm-hmm. They do all the brilliant shit that we're loving. Like, yeah, they've got the style and they've implemented it, but actually they don't seem to win as much as the Lucis style. It's like the Lucis style, if it's at its absolute max, seems to win more because you're just letting the stars win the game, basically. Mm-hmm. Whereas the other style, it can win for periods of time, but just doesn't seem to win as much. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. It sounds like it makes a lot of sense.
Is that a flaw in CS then? Because you and I would like to say, listen, CS, the beauty of CS is you can win with numbers advantage, and two lesser guys can beat a better guy if they get the jump on him, you know. But is there a degree to which CS is a bit more skewed to just the skill than we think?
Well, I mean, it's just sort of like basketball. I mean, basketball is a really skill-heavy sport. I think part of it is because if we compare to, say, something like hockey, is that both in CS and, well, I mean, not entirely, but for the most part in basketball, I mean, the best players play the whole time. I mean, like LeBron's, it's like, 5 minutes a game in playoffs. It's basically plays the whole game. Same goes for like most of the very best players except people in the Spurs. And in CS, you play the whole game. So then the superstars have more of an effect. Whereas in hockey, someone like Crosby is only going to play like 25 minutes a game. So then there's a whole other part to it where like he also needs contribution from the second, third, and fourth line in that team. So I think that already makes CS in comparison more skill heavy, I guess. And at the same time, like I really don't think we're like far enough in the development of Counter-Strike as a whole, because I think if Counter-Strike were to become big enough, teams would start having like coaches. Like you would just hire coaches who were like in-game leaders and would help you with all this other stuff. And ultimately, like there would be a good balance of how much the players get to decide themselves and how much they're told to do exactly what. Because obviously, someone who is in the game, and as someone who's been the in-game leader for a very long time, I can tell you, even if the people you're playing with are really good communicators, they're just never going to tell you everything they see. They're never going to be able to communicate everything they hear. So that person is always going to have more information than you will. Plus, he might have practiced against that team 20 times over the last year, and he might just have like small tells that might even be subconscious. Like he might just as soon as he hears like a little sound, he might just realize something's happening. Like a memory might come back to him. Like he's not gonna have time to communicate that. So I think like you can restrict players' intuition too much, because obviously like that is largely what got him there in the first place. I think Zed is a good example of this.
There's another question that almost sort of like tortures me because I don't think there's an answer, but I keep thinking because there must be some way to get a theory for it at least. And it goes like this: it's a problem that happens in real sports, which is whenever you have a player who his skills and what he's actually doing in the game are so good that he's either the best or he's comparable to whoever the best is. If he doesn't win, even though you could obviously just say, well, what teammates does he have? What situation is he in? What help is he getting? That would be the logical way to say it. But there is a degree to which the absolute best players almost are magical. Somehow they do find somehow they'll win in the end, it feels like. Even if they have a tortured career, eventually they'll win the final championship and then they'll retire, you know. So when a really, really great player is just stuck in like the trace role where he's over and over losing over and over, even though he might look like he's playing awesome, is it really is there a degree to which you think something in them also is not allowing them to win? What is your theory on it? What's your take? Because you know the easy analysis is like that bullshit of like, well, he's got to be the man, he's got to step up to the, you know, all that stuff. Like, to what degree is it the case that they play a role in them losing? And is it possible to just be stuck on teams where you can just never win?
I think it's possible to be stuck on teams. I think Trace is a pretty good example of that. And I think someone like Ruit, obviously, like, I think Ruit could have been, I think he could have been better than someone like Gux if he played. He might have even been better than Gux. I think that's up for debate. I'm okay with either side of that. But you know, like, he never got a major. He never got like a lot of big tournament wins. Now let's put Ruit on those Fnatic teams. Like he's gonna wreak havoc in there. So I mean, I think there's always players who sort of just get stuck in situations they can really do better. And in Counter-Strike, it's limited by nationalities for the most part, because some people just get born in countries. Like, say, Guardian, he's forced to play with Navi now, Virtus Pro before, because they're just not enough good players in Slovakia. In sports, it comes down to, like, getting drafted to the wrong teams or, you know, signing contracts that are too long for more money, things like that. But I think it's very possible that your career gets affected a lot by how you play with. And it's also like a fun what if to think about sometimes, I think. Or like what could have happened to someone otherwise had they not joined Team X or whatever.
Because of your job after your career. So after your career working at HLTV.org, you started commenting a lot more on like forums and stuff. And because you've got like a certain type of CS fan who doesn't like your style of commentary or they don't like your opinions, I've noticed your reputation as an in-game leader has gone from being like thought of as a pretty good in-game leader just below the Aves and the Khan to like people want to make out now as though you were like someone in like 3D Max now or something, like some total shitter. Like they won't even acknowledge that you were ever good or that you ever had any part in anything good, right? Yeah. And so what I want to know is, like, whereas I'll give you a contrast, someone who had a very similar career to yours, but technically maybe a little worse, is actually Threat. And yet if you ask anyone about Threat, they're going to tell you awesome guy, knows so much about the game, great commentator, yet he does all the same things you do, yet you might actually have been a little bit better at all those things. How do you think of your own career in that sense? How would you describe it to someone if you were trying to be fair? Like not blow it up too much, not diminish it too much. What would be a reasonable estimate of what lurppis' career as a CS in-game leader was like?
Well, first of all, I think I definitely had a better career than Threat. I mean, I don't think that's debatable. Like if you just look at tourney placings and whatever, and how long it lasted and all that stuff. But I mean, I think basically what I tell like my friends who know nothing about CS when they ask me like how good I was or whatever, I usually just say like when I lived in the US, we're by far the best in the US. In Finland, no one could ever touch us since like 2006. And then internationally, we're like in the at our best, we're like top 3, and then like for the most part, we're in like the top 5 through 8. Like that's what I usually tell people. Like my real life friends who just ask me about CS who don't know anything about it. So something like that. I mean, I think one of the probably better things about my career is that I was able to be in like lead one of the top teams in the world from basically like 2006 through 2012. It's not an easy thing, I don't think, to do it for that long, and I think that's. I mean, if there were reasonable people discussing all that, and they were saying that I was like a 3D Max type leader, then I might care. But there's not a lot of people left in the community whose opinion I value in that sense, because a lot of the old people are gone, and there weren't a lot of experts to begin with. So I'm content with what I've done, and I don't really think about it too much, or hardly ever.
That's like one of the final topics I have. It's about like, now that you get to do commentary and stuff like that, now you get to observe the community more than if you were a player. There's a really weird thing that I've noticed, which is, even though people will say that they want like advanced shit, they want like stats, they want in-depth stuff, they say that they want like this real deep level, like it was a real sport, but it feels like the average CS player is still just the guy who's looking at the headshots. And unfortunately, it's like there's a game with all this depth to it, but a lot of people deny that. They think that the top of the iceberg above the water, they're like, no, it's a myth that there's anything below. That all that exists is at the top. You're just overthinking it, mate. You're imagining an ice, all this shit below. Like, there isn't. Whereas what they don't realize is there's more down there. And if you get down there, that's the good shit. That's the really amazing shit. What do you get this sense? Like, why do you think it is that in theory, like most sports I can think of that have a complex nature to them, like chess or something like fucking snooker, or these things that have a lot of complicated shit, the average fan isn't like on the surface. What they like is that, that's what's really getting them into it, is how deep you can go. Can you think of any analogies or any other sports that are similar? What do you think?
Well, I think the thing about CS is that, first of all, a lot of the fans are pretty young, so that already limits it quite a bit. And second of all, CS is really, really easy game to get into, but just very hard to master. Whereas like if you start playing chess, like I'm sure you played chess when you were little. I played chess when I was little. Sure. Like if you play against someone who's like clearly better than you, it's just not fun. Like it's not like CS where you can just hide behind a box and you'll get a kill here and there. You actually feel good about it. You're just getting slaughtered if you're a little worse in chess. So I think every game or sport where it's like really, really easy to be a beginner and like you feel like you can actually contribute, that sort of happens where like it's harder for people to explain. Like that's what actually got me to Counter-Strike, is first of all like learning about the competition and all that, and then learning about like all the depth to it. Like I remember this, I have this like weird memory from like I think sometime in like 2003 or something, when I was just like landing with some of my friends in like my real life friends before we even made wings. And it was like one of the first times that we sort of just realized like, okay, well, like if we just go over a couple of strats and we just practice these all over, like we're gonna be better than these teams who are actually like better than us overall. Like they're more skilled, they have more experience, and I'm just like, okay, there's actually like a lot more to it. And to me, that's the interesting thing. But every now and then it is sort of depressing, especially if you just read like Twitter or like comments on sites and whatever. And especially that subreddit is just really depressing, because it seems like everybody's just blocking all that stuff out. And it's sort of mind-boggling, because you appreciate all that in-depth stuff, and it sort of just feels like you can't understand why everybody else doesn't appreciate it. Because to me, that's the best part. Like I don't really care so much about like right now I have the Mystic Navi game on. They're playing for I think Face It League, or I think ESCA. Like I have it on in the background. I'm just taking a look. Like I'm not really that interested in who's gonna win this game, because it really doesn't matter all that much. But it's like seeing little things, like say, it's not as easy anymore in CS:GO because I don't play myself. But in 1.6, like one of the most interesting things was, even if you get knocked out of a tournament, you watch the later stages of the tournament, and then you see the teams you practiced against do the same strats that you were practicing against, and then you notice that, okay, like Navi's now doing this strat, which they adapted from losing at this last tournament. Like they made the smallest change where like they might throw one smoke differently, and you notice it, and you just see how it changes everything, and the other team just buys it entirely. And all those little things, I think, are what makes Counter-Strike interesting to me. And that's what sometimes bothers me when, like I said, like people claim they want all this like really in-depth stuff, and then like once you do some of that, it seems like people don't understand a lot of it. I'm not sure if that made sense. I feel like I was blabbering a little bit.
No, I understand. I have another topic that's a subtle one to discuss for you, because it's relevant if you're going to be an analyst and you're going to do commentary and stuff. Like, one of the breakthroughs I had in my own career was when I realized it is really literally possible to, every now and then when you get it right, do perfect analysis. So you can literally become like a robot where you have all the information and you really have figured it all out, and you can totally take all the bullshit out of it. It's hard. The problem is you can't do it all the time. That's what I realized. That was the breakthrough I had. And so what you have to learn to do is, if you think about the game in the most honest way, there'll be times when you can actually separate, like, usually people use like head and heart as the analogy. You can actually separate the two, and you can really realize, like, oh wait, I think that this team's going to win, but I don't actually. That's just what I want to happen. And I really don't want the team that's going to beat them to win. And so I just want to believe that they're going to win. But if I actually analyze it and I think what maps they're going to play and the style matchup, I know, if I'm really honest with myself, like, they're going to lose. It's going to the other team's going to win 2-1. It's going to be these maps. So no matter what I think, by separating the two, it's like it's really fun when you pull it off. And then it happens and you're like, wow, it actually works. But the problem is, even if you manage to do that, there'll be the times when you think you've done that and you don't realize until afterwards, like, oh shit, no, I was listening to the wrong voice again. That was just me wishing they would win, you know. That was just me wanting to believe, like, no, that has to happen. Is this something you've noticed yourself? Could you give like an example in your career doing analysis or anything like that where you were just totally, you fucked it up. You picked the one where you just wanted them to win and really, come on, they weren't going to win.
I think I did that with LGB at Copenhagen Games when I predicted them to be Virtus Pro. I mean, like, if I actually sat down, looked at all their results and everything, like, I would have said Virtus Pro is better at the time and they're gonna win. But I think just from like doing so much research on LGB, because I wrote that article about them and all the other stuff, like, I think I just really wanted them to win that game just for like that reason. And I think that's a good example of that. And like you said, it's really hard to sometimes separate it. And plus, there's also like a third category to it, I think, when it comes to predicting games, because sometimes you sort of just get a gut feeling. And I think a lot of the time that gut feeling can be pretty good. Like, you know, like, you might not be able to explain why you feel that way, but there's usually a pretty rational reason. But then, like, what's really hard is to separate that gut feeling from just wanting someone to win. I think that's the hardest part.
So as a final topic, you'll like this one, okay? Because when people do predictions, if you get the prediction wrong, the person who's not a very refined thinker will say, well, if you got it wrong, you mustn't know anything about Counter-Strike. And vice versa, even better. Whoever got it right, they must know more than you. So even someone who just randomly, his account even says, like, Nip1234, fan of Get Right, and he predicted that, you know, Nip would win this tournament. And so if you predicted Virtus Pro, then he wins. Even though I'm guessing from his account, he's probably going to predict Nip no matter what. But regardless, what this leads into is a topic that will never die in CS, which goes like this. Say I think Nip will win this final, and then Existence comes out and he says, actually, I think Navi will win it. Then someone will say, well, I think Existence knows better than you, because obviously Existence is a player, he's in game, he's won a lot more than me. So by that logic, he has to know more than me. Well, the reason why I ask this question is because no one ever takes it the next step, which is, by that logic, like, Ruit knows more about Counter-Strike than lurppis will ever know. Forrest knows more than Khan will ever know. Is there a degree to which it's true in a sense? Is it a degree to which it's bullshit? Where do you lie on that spectrum? Because it's a hard one again, you know.
Well, I think, I'm not sure if the fact that you played professional Counter-Strike or whatever is like a really high qualification in itself. Because I've had teammates who just like Tonpa was a good example. Like, he followed CS when he played, you know, like, obviously. But he wasn't like a guy who would necessarily even know like who were all the semi-good teams in Sweden. Like, he wouldn't know who was like a really good upcoming star in like the semi-good teams unless we were practicing against them, and you could tell from there. And, you know, Ruud is a good example, obviously, because he just wasn't he just played. That's all he did. I don't think he spent much time thinking about Counter-Strike. I mean, some people just like to think about all that stuff a lot more. And some people think a lot less. Some people just play. So I don't think it necessarily qualifies you as like a super smart guy just just because you've been on a top team. And then sometimes it can become really hard to distinguish those guys who are actually like super smart and analytical and really think about all that stuff thoroughly, versus those guys who just been on those teams and they'll just, you know, say the first thing that comes to their mind. But you can't really distinguish them unless you get a lot of data of like what they've said and whatever, and you just like shift through it, or if you just know them personally, and then that becomes really easy.
Okay, to finish up, I've got like just a few quick fire, and so they're just
Okay.
simple question answer. Most underrated CS player ever.
Oh, it might be a Ruid, considering like how good he was and how much he did in like all those tournaments that we played at. And like now, if you ask people, I don't think people would even say he's like top 50 ever, which is pretty nuts to me.
Most overrated player ever. In Lurppis' opinion, obviously.
It's actually a really hard question. I'm trying to think of who's like who is like super overrated, who wasn't a very good player. This would have been a lot easier to answer a couple of years back.
Like if someone's putting together a top 10 players ever list, who's the guy who's going to be on there? Who you're like bullshit, but it's definitely going to be on there, you know?
Well, I mean, put it this way. And once again, we're friends. But if Karn makes a top 10 player ever list, which I think is conceivable, something's up.
Okay. Well, speaking of Khan, I had another fun quick fire that goes with him.
Okay.
Most underrated player who was actually better than Khan in any context.
Most underrated who was better than Karn. In any context? Like,
Just, well, obviously not like just Amy or something, you know, but just someone that people wouldn't, and no one else would say this, but you think this guy was probably better than Khan, you know?
if I were to make a team and there's no language restrictions, and you know, like I already have a leader, I'd probably take Senya over Karn. That's just like
That's gonna hurt him so badly.
Like if he's just a fragger, I'm gonna have Senya play alley for me, win a couple of clutches sometimes, and then just be really annoying to the other team. Like if he's a leader, then I'll take Karn
Over anyone?
not over everyone. I'm gonna take Abe first. Abe is my first pick in our imaginary. We just
Karn is number
built
2?
the time machine. Karn is 2 or 3, depending on Zeus. I can't make up my mind.
Do you think you could have played in a team with Khan?
I'm not sure if it would have made sense considering we're both leaders, but I think I could have played with him.
I mean, couldn't you be like the good for nothing type guy?
Yeah, I think so.
If your life depended on a game of CS, but you can't play it, you have to pick a player who plays it for you. Who's the guy you're going to trust your life with?
Just one guy.
Yep. I mean, he's going to be playing a team or whatever. You can only pick one.
Is this 1.6
Yeah.
Prime?
Sure.
It's either Neo or Markelov. I'd probably pick Neo just because he's more versatile.
And he's just he's the guy you trust. You know he's going to win the game.
I think his track record in like majors and whatever is pretty solid. Like if his life is also in danger, if he's just playing for like a Copenhagen Games prize purse, then I probably don't want Neo. But if his life is also in danger, then I probably want him.
Ignoring language and culture barriers, which player, if Lurppis had got hold of this guy and been able to have him in his team, he could have like developed this guy to, he could have been a really good player, but he never had the development. He never had the right guy to push him or send him in the right direction. Who would you want in that scenario?
I actually think if I got to nothing like 2 years earlier, like that would have really changed his career a lot, because I think Steno had already sort of ruined him in a sense by the time I got to EG.
What had he done?
Oh, it's just like he just embraced a lot of his bad habits that were impossible to get rid of. Like I think nothing was incredibly talented. Like for like he's also, I think, overrated in the context of 1.6. Like he was one of the best players in the world, but people make it out to be like he's one of the best players ever, which obviously is not the case. But I really think that if like even if nothing had just stuck with Turmoil, like when he was playing with Good for Nothing and those guys, I think he would have had a lot better career. Like I think all those bad habits wouldn't have been embraced, and I think he would have just come out a lot better. Because I think Nothing is one of the most talented players ever to play Counter-Strike.
If you were still a player in CS:GO and the same scenario happened, the best NA team, and it's up to you who that is, says, Lurppis, we want you to come here, live here. You're going to lead our team, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to take over the European strats. You're going to have the American fraggers. Is CS:GO different enough, or are the teams that are available in NA now different enough that you couldn't do the same thing? Just elevate them 1 or 2 steps higher and maybe be like 5th best team in the world. Would it be doable?
Is this if I were playing CS:GO or if I just like jumped in now?
If you were an in-game leader, obviously with experience, you know.
Well, I mean, if I were playing this whole time, then I think I could improve, because I think North America still lacks very good in-game leaders. I mean, they do okay, but I think I would be better than the people they have right now in terms of just like leadership and doing, well, basically just making them better than they are right now. I think I could do that, yeah. But obviously that would have required me to having been playing CS:GO and all that stuff, which is clearly not the case.
Do you have any final words, someone you want to thank at the end of the interview?
Well, thank you for the interview. Obviously, it's been a pleasure. And then, I mean, that's about it. If you want to follow what I write and do and say, find me on Twitter, lurppis_. And then I write on HLTV, so if you're watching this, you've probably already been there. That's about it.
Okay. Kiitos.
Cheers.